This is the GERM Report for the week of August 17th. The price of oil barely moved last week, getting stuck between competing signs of economic progress under quarantine. The price for Brent crude oil gained just 0.9% last week to close Friday trading at $44.80 per barrel. The announcement last week that the Emirati government was warming to Israel was surprise progress during an otherwise standstill year. The UAE would become only the third Arab nation to normalize relations with Israel, and the first nation to do so from the Persian Gulf. Hailed by the power brokers involved as a step forward for the Palestinians, the arrangement actually may be destabilizing to the region. The Emirati government stated that its decision to normalize relations with Israel was made on the contingency that annexation of Palestinian territory would end, but the terms of the arrangement were violated from the start. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he was standing pat on his territorial ambitions, adding he'd consult with the United States rather than his new Arab ally on the annexation of Palestinian territories. Instead of bridging over the differences, the Israeli pivot only widened the regional chasms. The Kuwaiti government said it would be the last country to normalize relations with Israel, and then quickly dialed up the foreign ministry in Iran. Silent on the diplomatic tilt, the Qatari government is no friend of the Emirates. Qatar in recent days has been lashing out at the UAE for cyber meddling in its official Qatari news agency. The head of the Turkish parliament condemned the Emirati government's first decision. Iran said the UAE made a huge mistake, warning the Emirati government it was facing a dangerous future. The United Arab Emirates sits in troubled waters, and its port at Fujairah is one of the busiest in the region. Last May, 4 ships, including 2 from Saudi Arabia, were ostensibly targeted by Iran or Iranian-backed agents at the busy port. Occurring on the weekend, the blasts at the port of Fujairah did little to move the needle on the price of oil, but it was a prelude to bigger events. A month later, the Iranian military shot down a U.S. drone flying near the area. Brent shot up some 4% in response, and there was real concern about open warfare between the United States and Iran. And in July last year, the Iranian military seized the Stena Impero, a British-owned oil tanker in the Persian Gulf. Iran has shown that its military and its proxies are capable of lashing out at their foes, and the Emirati tilt through that lens is destabilizing. Iranian proxies in Lebanon, meanwhile, are likely to lash out given the dual pressures of political chaos in Beirut and growing Israeli ambitions both in the geopolitical arena and in the energy sector. Israel claimed to win when U.S. supermajor Chevron acquired Noble Energy, giving it a foothold in the giant Leviathan gas field in the Mediterranean. The Israeli press called the agreement the best offshore development in years, but it's situated squarely in the middle of a hotspot for violence. When fighting broke out in 2006 between Israel and Lebanon, the Iranian-backed Hezbollah took its fight to the water. The disputed maritime territory between Lebanon and Israel is small, but the oil and gas potential is huge. Turkey, too, has a role here as it works to exploit its geopolitical position as a bridge between Asian, Middle East, and European power centers. Turkey has stubborn claims to parts of the Mediterranean as well, and its waters closer to home serve as an Turkey has stubborn claims to parts of the Mediterranean as well, and its waters closer to home serve as an important energy link to Europe. Turkish ambitions in Libya, meanwhile, could easily lead to a proxy war with Russia as both powers look to play kingmaker in the North African oil producer. In Greece, European leaders warned that Ankara's determination to drill for oil and gas offshore heightened the risk of a dangerous escalation, and while territorially Turkey is detached from the UAE, its growing influence in the Mediterranean could spell trouble for Israel should the poles of alignment consolidate in us-and-them fashion in the Middle East. This has been the GERM Report for August 17th. I'm Dan Graber.